Welcome. My name is Bruce Fielder, and I'm privileged to be the worship associate this morning and part of the team that is working to live stream this service to you wherever you may be. We are an inclusive congregation that welcomes you as you are, inclusive of all your identities, complexities, and situations. We welcome your whole self, even if it isn't fully assembled, because we recognize that we are a work in progress and that we are all in this together. The service is being posted on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page, so folks can watch it again later. Feel free to share it with your friends. Now, if you'll join me in our opening affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship. For these high purposes do we unite for worship. Our chalice lighting today is A Flame to Light Our Path by Deborah Burrell. Fire consumes and casts a bright light. May our chalice flame consume our regrets for the past, our fears about the future, and our worries about today. May it light for us a path of joy and peace.
If you watched this a couple of weeks ago, you found out how to become friends with a pirate. Well, today we're going to talk about frisbees. This is another poem by Shel Silverstein in his A Light in the Attic book. Adventures of a Frisbee. The frisbee, he got tired of sailing to and fro and to, and thought about the other things he might like to do. So the next time that they threw him, he turned there in the sky and sailed away to try and find some new things he could try. He tried to be an eyeglass, but no one could see through him. He tried to be a UFO, but everybody knew him. He tried to be a dinner plate, but he got cracked and quit. He tried to be a pizza, but got tossed and baked and bit. He tried to be a hubcap, but the cars all moved too quick. He tried to be a record, but the spinning made him sick. He tried to be a quarter, but he was too big to spend. So he rolled home, quite glad to be a frisbee once again. So, what if you were like the frisbee and you got tired of what you had always been? So what are you? Are you a kid? Are you a student? Are you a grown-up? Do you have a job? What other things could you try? Could you try to be a firefighter? But what if you're not brave enough? Could you try to be a spy? But what if you're not sneaky enough? Could you try to be a scientist? But what if you're not educated enough? Could you try to be a football player? What if you're not big enough? Could you try to be a ballet dancer? What if you're not graceful enough? Could you try to be an angel? What if you're not good enough? So what if you just go back home being quite glad to be the best you can be?
A poem by a well-known American writer, Canadian. Her name is Margaret Atwood. Grandmother. How little I know about you, finally. The time you stood in the 19th century on Yonge Street, 1,000 miles from home, with a brown purse, and a man stole it. 6 children, 5 who lived. She never said anything about those births and the one death. Her mouth closed on a pain that could neither be told nor ignored. She used to have such a sense of fun. Now, girls, she would say when we would tease her. Her anger, though, why, that would curl your hair. Though she never swore, the worst thing she could say was, "Don't be foolish." At 80, she had 2 teeth pulled out and walked the 4 miles home in the noon sun, placing her feet in her own haunched shadow. The bibbed print aprons, the shock of the red lace dress, the pin I found at 6 in your second drawer made of white beads the shape of a star. What did we ever talk about, grandmother, but food, health, and the weather? Sons branch out, but one woman leads to another. Finally, I know you. Through your daughters, my mother, her sisters, and through myself. Is this you, this edgy joke I make? Are these your long fingers? Your hair of an untidy bird? Is this your outraged eye, this grip that will not give up?
We are here to be lifted in love. Look at the birds, they tell us. We are here to be lifted in love. Look at the trees, they tell us. We're here to be lifted in love, to listen to love as a flower raises its face to the sun. We are all one, here to be lifted in grace and love. We are here to be lifted in love. Look at the sky, it tells us. We are here to be lifted in love. Look at the trees, they tell us. We're here to be lifted in love, to listen to love as the children raise all their faces to the sun. We are all one, here to be lifted in grace and love. We are here to be lifted in love. Look at the trees, they tell us. We are here to be lifted in love. Look at the seas, they tell us. We're here to be lifted in love, to listen to love as a flower raises its face to the sun. We are all one, here to be lifted in grace and love.
Our message today will be presented by Linda Cook, a longtime member of our fellowship, having joined in 1978. Her husband is Paul Katz, who joined in 2017, and Linda serves on our worship committee as well. She will be speaking on Family Matters, Spinning COVID Confinement into Gold.
Hi, you friends and visitors. I'm glad to be with you this morning. although I'd like it much better if we could be together in person, exchange a handshake or a hug. Since we can't do those things yet, I'll share with you a bit about how I have used this time of COVID isolation. My isolation hasn't been total, of course. I've shared the shut-in experience with my husband, Paul Katz, and I'm very grateful for the partnership with him in the tasks of making it through this strange and stressful time. But the other aspect of my coping with isolation has been the taking on of a huge project, one that I've intended to embark upon for a very long time, but have successfully found lots of ways to procrastinate. Now, finally completed, after more than a year of work, is the writing of a family history, a great, big, fat, illustrated with photos history of how my great-grandparents and grandparents on both sides of my family came to live a life here in the Panhandle, a life rich with struggle, hard times, losses, some failures, and many successes. This photo is the cover of my family history. Now, I'm not going to impose on you the reading of my bulky family history. Instead, I'll share just a few facts and anecdotes, but only enough to underline my message of how rewarding and how significant I have come to think it is to capture at least some of our own pasts in a way that those who come after us, our children, nieces, nephews, great-grandchildren and theirs, can know more about who they were, where they are, and why. For example, here's a one-page entry from my family history called The Theme of Life. They were just a bowl of home-canned tomatoes my paternal grandmother, Lizzie Cook, placed in front of me when I was 3 or 4 years old. 3 of her children, the younger ones, Marilyn, Jerry, Carolyn, and I, Linda, sat on a rough-hewn wooden bench in the farmhouse kitchen. Grandmother sprinkled sugar on the tomatoes. With audible delight, we slurped them up, tipped the bowls to drink the last dribbles, then ran back outside to slide down the haystack on a scrap of corrugated tin. We could see my granddad, worthy cook, working high on the windmill tower. The dogs and cats circled our feet to get their share of attention. It wasn't until midlife that I realized how much more those tomatoes represented than just an afternoon snack. Or then again, to remember the incident so well, maybe I had an inkling even then, how remarkable was the event that leapt fresh to my mind more than 50 years later as I walked once more over the hill where that farmhouse had once stood on that day when I was about 4. All this was on a small farm in the eastern sector of the Texas Panhandle. They were dryland farmers, Mary Elizabeth Lizzie Tunget Cook and Welcome Worthy Cook, my grandparents, my father's dear, hard-working parents. Lizzie had scratched the ground, planted those tomato seeds, and beans, corn, okra, cucumbers, squash, and peas. She had weeded the garden, picked and washed the vegetables, and over a wood-burning stove, Lizzie had canned those tomatoes in mason jars. She carried them down to the cellar. Watch for snakes now and centipedes. Then she fetched a jar for that afternoon's treat when we came in hungry from playing under the fruit trees that her mother, Laura Tunget, had planted on the hill. Many years before, Laura, my great-grandmother, had carried buckets of water from the windmill to the trees for some years until their roots took hold. Now, peaches, apples, apricots, and mulberries bloomed each spring. The big one was the mulberry tree. As kids, we hung by our knees, as we called it, from the lower branches. The sandy soil softened our falls. We caught our breath. Then we played jungle and safari and house. More than anything, we played house in the deep shade of that small orchard. We ate the berry pies without a thought for Laura's planting or Lizzie's picking and cleaning and canning and baking. So the little bowl of sweet red tomatoes served up while tendrils escaped the braids wound around Grandmother Lizzie's head represented the dawn-to-dark toil she engaged in to keep her family fed and clothed and comforted. She labored endlessly, just as her parents had done in homesteading that place early in the century. Lizzie and my grandfather, Worthy Cook, like my mother's parents, Leslie and R.C. Gaither, lived in a time and on a land where there was never a comforting answer to the question they labored against daily, the question of survival. Will there be enough to eat tomorrow, next month, through the cold, barren winter? The theme of their daily lives was survival. There was neither time nor energy for any other. That's one memory, one little piece of a multi-generational family history. So how does one go about gathering and writing a family history? Well, with some blood, sweat, and tears, of course. My process was first to talk to elders in my family. Now, not many elders are left that are older than I am at age 77, but I reached out, asked questions, listened to stories, made notes, and in time began to organize and to write. I was amazed at how much each of these elders loved being asked, loved talking about early memories, loved being valued as a person with rich experience and knowledge. Those talks were in themselves a great gift. I also searched out old photos and found a treasure trove of them in my mother's basement, scattered and jumbled and rich with detail and memories, hers and mine. My mom, by the way, at age 94, is still living in her own home with the help of her longtime friend and assistant, Michael Rosetta. In Mom's own words, she's a tough old bird and proud of it. So with stacks of notes and transcripts of conversations and many photos, I began to write. It was overwhelming at times. How does one organize so much information? Finally, I simply wrote pieces, little stories my mom and others had told me, facts I found along the way, my own memories. Then I began to organize those pieces into three major categories. One, the section is the story of my dad's side of the family. The second section is the story of my mom's side. The third section is the story of my own life journey so far. I first wrote about how my great-grandparents on both sides of my family came to the panhandle of Texas in wagons pulled by horses, and about the losses along the way. My dad's grandparents lost 2 children on the arduous journey to the panhandle, one of diphtheria, and another child died from falling off the horse-drawn wagon. Once they reached the panhandle, drawn here by the 1909 Expanded Homestead Act, my paternal grandparents, Frank and Laura Tungett, homesteaded a farm about 13 miles southeast of a little community settled by a few Irish immigrants called Shamrock, Texas. There they farmed the land with none of the mechanized equipment of today, raising alfalfa, wheat, corn, and other crops. They also raised their many children on that farm. When they were too old to do such backbreaking work, my grandparents, Lizzie and Worthy Cook, my father's parents, took over the farm. They continued there until they too were aging. Most of the happiest memories of my young life occurred on that farm. In the center of this photo is my father, W.R. Cook, called Cookie, with an aunt and uncle. The farm is, by the way, still in the family. Another photo. My mom and I revisited the old farm site a few years ago. On my mother's side, I wrote about her father who was orphaned, then taken in and raised by two spinster sisters, teachers on a Native American Indian reservation in Oklahoma. Once grown, or what passed for grown in those days, Mom's dad, R.C. Gaither, became a horse trader operating mainly out of Austin, Texas. R.C. met and married Leslie Hill, my mom's mother, after which the couple settled in Twitty, near what is now Shamrock, Texas. This photo is of the Hill family reunion in 1928, my mom's side. My mom, Virgie, is the baby held by her father in the center of the back row. In Twitty, once a thriving community, Mom's parents opened a wagon yard. Families who came to town from surrounding farms left their wagons and horses at the wagon yard while they shopped or saw the doctor, the barber, friends, or family. At the wagon yard, Mom's dad, R.C., groomed, fed, and watered the family's horses or mules when needed. He reshod the animals, he repaired their wagons, he kept a fire going out in the center of the wagon yard so that families could warm themselves or cook a meal over the fire. Those farm families who lived at some distance from town brought quilts and pillows and slept overnight up in the bed of their wagons parked at the wagon yard. Next day, they made the arduous journey back home to their farm or ranch. After writing pieces about each of my great-grandparents and grandparents, I wrote about my parents' early lives. This photo was taken on their wedding day at a picnic on the banks of the North Fork of the Red River. Finally, I wrote a third section about some of the highlights of my own life. The birthing of my two beautiful daughters, Chris and Shell. I also had two remarkable teaching experiences, one at the university in Shah Alam, Malaysia, and later at the university in Baku, Azerbaijan on the Caspian Sea. This is a photo of my visiting a Pinon village in Borneo, off the coast of Malaysia. I also wrote about the painful losses of some of my loved ones and about the sweet surprises, like falling in love again at an advanced age with a New Englander named Paul Katz, and like the joyful arrival of a first great-grandchild, Sadie Wren. Here were 5 generations, Virgie seated, then Linda, Chris, Karen, and baby, Sadie Wren. After the writing was complete, Paul assisted by inserting photos with captions right into the text at the appropriate places to complement the story. Without Paul's assistance, I'd have never managed that technical feat. The text in many cases wraps itself right around the related photos. I also added as an addendum at the end of the narrative copies of many family documents such as certificates of birth, marriages, deaths, also military draft and service records, including the photo of a beautiful certificate of service parchment shown here with gold medallions, which honors my father's 2 years of working in the U.S. naval shipyards in San Francisco, building and repairing ships during World War II. Finally, it came time to take the hefty manuscript to be printed and bound. We had one copy done in order to check it out for glitches. There were a few. We made corrections. Then we had 6 copies made and spiral bound, one for each of my 2 daughters and their families, one for each of my 2 grown granddaughters, one for my mom, and yes, one for ourselves. At the end of this month, my daughters are coming from Austin and Norman, Oklahoma to celebrate my birthday. I'll present each of them with their copy of the family history. So, what did I learn from a year of gathering and writing a family history? Was it worth all the time and struggle to put so much information into a form that will, I hope, be a satisfying read? Yes, I am glad I did it. It was worth all the agony, and now there's the ecstasy of completion. And I'll be forever appreciative of Paul's encouragement and assistance in making it into an attractive book. What I learned from the process is a deeper appreciation for the hard work, the struggles and losses my ancestors suffered. I'm grateful to them to have also learned more about their successes, their accomplishments, and their dedication to family, to me. I'm especially glad that I can now pass along to my daughters, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and theirs a deepened sense of family pride and appreciation. I hope this family history with photos will encourage them in their own endeavors in life, that it may provide them with a model for how a family works its way through hard times while also celebrating victories and major life events. Family is priceless. None is perfect. That revelation too can be instructive. The imperfections merely affirm that together we can make it through the hard times and the joyful ones. May you and yours live long and be well.
At this time in our service, we recognize the joys and concerns of the community. We didn't have any joys or concerns shared with us at this time, so I shall light a candle for the unspoken joys and concerns of our fellowship. Usually at this time in our service, the congregation makes its financial offering. If you've made a pledge or would like to make a contribution, you can simply mail it in to our office, or you can make it online. There is a donate button on our YouTube landing page and on our website, uuamarillo.org. On the home page in the upper right corner, you will find a big blue donate button that will take you to a place where you can donate securely using PayPal. If you have made a financial pledge for this year, please keep up your pledge. We are in the middle of our 2022 Stewardship Pledge Drive. Our members received pledge slips in the mail with prepaid return envelopes, so if you haven't returned your pledge, please do so by October 31st. While we are not meeting in person for our 11 o'clock service, some groups are still meeting. The Nothing Much Buddhist group will continue to meet on Monday evenings at 7:30 p.m. using Zoom. Please check their Facebook page for more information. On Sunday mornings at 10 a.m., the Knowledge Seekers group meets at the fellowship to view and discuss DVD presentations on various topics. All are welcome as long as you are vaccinated, wear your mask, and maintain social distancing while in Chandler Hall.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
To extinguish our chalice today, the saying is, "This is the message of our faith," by Maureen Killoran. This is the message of our faith, to act with passion in the face of injustice, to love with courage in the midst of life's pain. This is the meaning of our chalice flame. May it empower our hearts until we are together again. And now, our closing words. May the fellowship of this hour touch and move our lives until we come again together.